Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Blair. I just set the world record and became the very first woman in history to sail solo around Antarctica. I completed the trip a couple of weeks back and I did it with one stop. I did demast 1,000 miles south of South Africa and ended up building a jury rig with my boom and getting some fuel from a container ship before safely arriving in South Africa. And then I was able to restart the record and carry on and finally, yeah, a couple of weeks ago set my world record. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about the BNG equipment that I had on board my boat for that journey. On my rudder itself, I set up 2 independent autopilots. So one of the autopilots I call my primary system, which is connected through to my Zeus display in the cockpit here, and I also had another Zeus display down inside the boat on like a pivot, so that I could lay in bed and pivot it to the windward side of the boat or the leeward side, depending on what side I was sleeping on, and still get all my information and be able to control my primary autopilot from that system. I then also had a secondary autopilot which was completely independent of any other displays, so that had its own motion sensor, its own precision 9 compass, it had all of its own brain, and everything was separate, so that if one system for any reason had an issue, I had a full redundancy there on the systems. Coming up here, the same thing, same sort of rule applies. I had 2 Zeus displays and I could have unplugged and plugged as required if anything happened there. You can see I've got my secondary control here for my autopilot, and then my primary system was also controlled off this display controller here, and I had another one up at my helm, so it made it really easy when I was wanting to you know, hove to the boat or do a large course change. I could just hit standby and auto from the wheel as well. Both of my autopilots, I also had the remotes, the Wi-Fi Bluetooth remote set up on both autopilots as well. So if I wasn't on my primary system and I was using my secondary system, which I did do from time to time, just to make sure it was still operating correctly, I could lay in bed and just alter my course using the remote control from bed, which was really, really handy. And the other really great thing about this, I have 2 displays here, and then down inside the boat I have another display which just gives me my wind angles, my depth, my speed, my course over ground, my boat speed. Yeah, and I could watch the angles of the wind coming through and the changes there as well from anywhere in the boat. On the Zeus display, I also have a 4G radar, which I found fantastic actually for the amount of detail with identifying shipping. When I was approaching Cape Town after my demasting, I was in a pan situation, so I was sort of 1 step down from a mayday, and when I was heading north and I was crossing the shipping lanes that go under the Cape there, I had about 16 ships coming right at me at one point. So the use of the guard zones on the radar and the radar itself to be able to identify targets was really good, and then I had the AIS as well working together with that, so that I could work out my closest point of approach with most of those ships and take action if required, or ask for them to give way to me because I was operating in an emergency situation. The other really great thing is that you can customize this display to display whatever numbers you want. So for me, I have my lat and long position, my sea temperature, because it was really important to be able to monitor the temperature to know if I was encountering icebergs or not. My boat speed, my speed over ground, my course over ground, my wind angle for my apparent wind angle and my apparent wind speed, and then I also have my true wind direction so that I could monitor if I was getting large wind shifts coming through while I was sailing. And then I had my time in local and my time in UTC, so that I could have my local time on my family, so I knew what time it was back in Australia even when I was on the other side of the world. So I knew when I could call my family and chat to them without having to really do the math every time. And then I also had my barometric pressure up on that display, which was really useful. Obviously if you're getting a sharp fall or a sharp rise in your barometric pressure, you know a storm's coming, so I would monitor that, and it was also a great indicator when I was in one of the really big storms to know when the storm was actually past me and I was coming out the back end of the system, so I'd watch the barometer pressure rise. So that's a pretty broad overview of my systems on board the boat, but yeah, the way I set it up was just having dual of everything, and I found it really, really useful. So thanks, BNG.